Ladies and gentlemen, China takes a page out of Korea's playbook. I give you some in-depth information about what to expect on the QiRanger channel. All this and more coming up next. The QiRanger podcast starts now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the QiRanger podcast. I am Steve Miller, the internet's QiRanger, and I would like to thank you for spending part of your day here with me on YouTube, on QiRanger.com, or downloading the podcast via iTunes. Before we jump into this week's news, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for watching these videos, not only the podcast, but the videos I put out each and every week, leaving your comments and sharing them. It means a tremendous amount to me, and I just wanted to say thank you. So, we're doing this old school podcast this week. I raise my glass of bourbon to you. Cheers, wish you long life and good health. That does hit the spot. So, this week's news roundup is quite extensive and there is a lot to cover. And I want to go with a story out of China, which kind of resonates with me here in Korea. In New York, China is taking out newspaper ads promoting the Daewoo Islands, or in Japan they would be referred to as Senkaku. So the ads say Daewoo Islands belong to China, much like the way that Korea has put out ads in the past and is preparing to do so again, saying that Dokdo is Korean territory. And while I understand the national pride and the importance of stating this in a public forum, the fact of the matter is, outside this immediate region, no one cares. This is an issue between the regional powers, between China and Japan, between Korea and Japan. And if you look at the Daewoo Islands here in the southeastern area of the sea, between Korea and China, outside of these particular countries, no one cares, and continuously wasting money on these ads and t-shirts and different promotions. It is lost in a sense of content. It is just money lost, money wasted. There have been numerous cultural performances in New York by Korea where you have a brilliant display of Korean arts, and then at the final stroke, a banner pops up that says, Dokdo is Korea. And while the statement is true, it's completely out of context. And the normal person in New York City will have no knowledge of what Dokdo is, why it is important, what the dispute is really about. So your ad campaign falls on flat ears. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this Chinese and the new Korean campaign. No one is going to care. These are things that need to be discussed at a political level between the nations and really not in the public eye. No one cares, and it needs to stop. There are so many other programs that could be funded with the money spent on placing New York, U.S. ads that could be put to better use. Come on now, guys, stop it. In some other Chinese-Japanese relation issues, a story came out saying that the anti-Japanese protests are on the uptick. And at least one Japanese business owner in the area had rebranded his Japanese restaurant as a Korean establishment in order to keep it open. He said that people were threatening to close it down, to throw rocks through the window. So he called up a friend, and the friend recommended, hey, pretend you're Korean. And apparently that's what he did, and that worked. He actually took down the sushi signs and made it up a shikdang, a Korean restaurant, changed the way that he made things, and learned to say that I am Korean. Apparently people in the neighborhood have a very short memory, because if you take something down and you put something back up and it's the same people running it, chances are their ethnicity didn't change. So I think it's an interesting comment that If this is true, there seems to be an increase in racial violence in China, particularly because of the controversy over the disputed land. And which is also a shame too, because again, these are very small, insignificant islands in the large scheme of things. As regional powers, especially where it comes to the economy, you need to work together. There's a global recession, there's global problems in terms of vast economic security. And China, Japan, and Korea are the powerhouses here in East Asia. You need to put aside these differences and find a way to effectively work together. Hopefully, in the next 3-4 years, all this will be put aside and 3 countries can get along. In the UK, Gangnam Style is finally catching on. It says Gangnam Style, while vastly popular in the United States, I actually just saw the Jay Leno Denim Style parody not too long ago. It's finally really catching on in the United Kingdom. And again, I really think that the popularity of Psy's Gangnam Style is just an exquisite commentary on substance over flash. So much time, so much effort has been placed on these produced girl bands and boy bands to break it overseas. And Psy did it just like that. What he was able to achieve in one single instance, leapfrogged Wonder Girls, leapfrogged Sonia Shide, leapfrogged Big Bang, all these other big name bands. And I'm so thrilled. I am so proud that this is the individual that captured the world in terms of really making K-pop mainstream. Because this is an individual that knows his stuff, that works hard, and isn't just pretty on the outside. He has tons of substance. And that's not to say that the girl bands and the boy bands aren't pretty on the inside, but they aren't he isn't the richly choreographed, produced group that they are. And I'm really just tickled pink to that. The one thing I will say, that as I watch commentary from around the globe, I find it interesting that so many people mispronounce Gangnam. Ellen, on Ellen DeGeneres show, Gangnam, and a lot of people picked up on that and keep on calling it Gangnam Style, even though they'll have the song playing in the background and it's Gangnam. So I really hope that is corrected. It's a little pet peeve of mine, just because I do live here and I do travel to Gangnam quite often. So interesting. North Korea, the assembly has once again ignored its local population. While upping the mandatory education term from 11 to 12 years, it's still prioritizing the military over the common people. They say this is to prevent it from being overrun by the likes of Japan and other enemies of the state, specifically South Korea and the United States, and is a sign of the continued emphasis on the military regime there. Currently, 1 kilogram of rice is going for about 7,000 North Korean won. I'm not really sure the conversion rate is, but I would assume that is quite steep there. To give you a kind of a price comparison, even if they were on parity, North Korean won and South Korean won, a kilogram of rice here in the South is about 3,500 won per kilogram. So at least double the price in North Korea for a kilogram of rice. And really premium rice here is about 3,500 per kilogram. So you can get cheaper grades of rice for a cheaper amount. So cost of food there must be continuously skyrocketing, not only because of the emphasis on the military personnel, but because of the rains we've had this summer, just devastating amounts of rain. Some other things coming on here in the South, there is a slight increase in consumer prices of about 1.2% due to those rains because it destroyed some of the crops. They got too much water. In another instance, and this goes back to the lead story with the stupidity of all these territorial disputes, Nobuyuki Suzuki, a member of an ultra-right Japanese party, allegedly put a wooden post with the phrase claiming Japan's sovereignty over Dokdo. So, and I don't get the rationale behind this, but a South Korean memorial group is filing suit against them for doing that. Seriously, this is an individual, a lone individual in another country with no political ties, not residing on Korean soil, expressing his opinion over this controversial topic, and you're going to sue him. Really now? Now, Korea does have some really, in my opinion, whacked out defamation laws and libel laws. So much so that if you say something and it offends somebody else, you can be held liable for it. I really disagree with that, but this is taking things way too far. A citizen of another country saying something that you deem offensive, and now you're going to try and sue them in that country. That's way out of line, and just goes to show you how badly these disputes need to be resolved. And I've said it time and time again. What needs to happen between all these three individual countries is you need to sit down at a table and find a way to effectively resolve it. And I think the most effective way to resolve these disputes is look at the effective control. I mentioned this a few weeks back when we were talking about the International Court of Justice and what they look at in terms of settling disputes. And one of the main things is who maintains effective control. For Dokdo Takeshima dispute, that's Korea. For the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands, that's Japan. For the Aiwa Islands between Korea and China, who cares? They're submerged islands. No one is going to be able to land there. It should just be left up as an international body of water, islets, rocky outcrop. No one should have it. But anyway, this lawsuit is crazy. And another thing with North Korea, this is a little bit interesting. A gas pipeline was proposed to link natural gas from Russia to South Korea, mainly passing through the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea. And based on a method used by other countries, specifically Ukraine, the going rate for passage rights is about $2 per 1,000 cubic meters of natural gas per kilometer. And everybody thought that would be a reasonable fee, about $150 million US dollars per year, given the amount of gas that South Korea would import from Russia. However, North Korea said no. We want between $300 and $500 million to allow the transit to occur, which is double to almost 3 times, if not more. It is more than 3 times, but double to 3 times plus of what the going rate is. And that really speaks volume as to what North Korea wants to do in terms of interacting with neighboring countries. It takes a surefire stream of income, tries to extort it to get more money, to pay for programs they want, but at the same time hurting their ally, Russia, and penalizing South Korea. So I kind of actually see their point. It's either a win-win-win for them. They win if they get paid the extra amount, and they win if they don't get paid, because then they screw off they screw out their other partners in the area. So in their minds, it's probably just an offset. They don't really want the business. They don't really care about the business. They just want to mess with people around the area. So that was really unfortunate, because with winter coming up, more people will be relying on natural gas, both in North Korea and here in South Korea, because the winters do get quite chilly. In some, I guess, disturbing news out of Seoul, Comfort Women, the group that meets in front of the Japanese embassy, the Unification Ministry last month levied a fine of 500,000 won, which is about $450, to the Korean Council for the Women Drafted for Military Sexual Slavery for launching an unauthorized protest jointly with North Korea because of their plight. At the time, North and South Korea were one nation, the chosen, and it was only after World War II ended that the 38th parallel was drawn by an American to separate the two political ideals, Russia and the United States, in creating North and South Korea. Now, South Korea has a number of laws in place outlining what you can and cannot do in support of North Korea, what you can say about North Korea. In fact, there was a person put in jail because of a satirical tweet about North Korea. But this is really going too far to find the comfort women because they're trying to bring awareness of their plight against the Japanese government. Words just really can't fully express how idiotic that seems to find these women who suffered so much for so many years. It's just stupid. And in other stupid fine news, Costco is being fined. So I mentioned before the law in Seoul where big box retailers, Costco, Home Plus, E-Mart, and Lotte Mart were supposed to close on 2 Sundays a month to give an opportunity to the smaller mom and pop shops to compete with them, to drive business away from the big box retailers to the local stores. And, well, that really didn't work. The Korean stores filed suit and actually had the law overturned. While it was going through the courts, Costco remained open and was paying the fines. Now that the court case has settled and it was found to be an unjust law, overturned, thrown out, the Seoul government is still trying to make Costco pay. And this is what I really have a problem with. They say that Costco has to pay because they didn't participate in the legal case against the local government. That they are planning to demonstrate in front of the Costco buildings and force the U.S. retailer to close on the Sundays, even though the law has been found unjust. Now, I think one of the reasons why they're trying to produce this is actually to protect Korean businesses. Costco operates 8 stores in Korea, and those 8 stores generate so much money that the likes of E-Mart, Home Plus, and Lotte Mart just can't compete. In fact, I mentioned in a blog post recently that Vicmart has now opened here in Dongtan as a competing store against Costco. The Yangjae Costco, where my Costco video was filmed, is the busiest Costco and generates the most revenue in all of Korea. And on the way to that Costco, you pass an E-Mart Traders, which is E-Mart Shinsegae's version of Costco, and you have Vicmart here, and there's another one opening up not too far away. So more and more of these warehouse stores are trying to get into the market to take away some of that Costco business. In some other news here in Korea, and this is of the sick variety, and this blows my mind as well. This week has mind-blowing news. 65% of Korean teachers with documented sex offenses are still in the classroom. Let me say that again. They're still in the classroom. This is ridiculous. Previously, I mentioned a native teacher who allegedly had some sexual assault, sexual contact with a minor here in Korea. He fled to the United States, was successfully extradited back to Korea. He got 4 years in prison. That's right, 4 years in prison for molesting a young student. A lot of the data in the report state that these sexual assaults or sexual offenses range from harassment to rape, and for the most part are just simple slaps on the wrist. Unfortunately, I think what's going to happen is at one point there's going to be a watershed moment. And if you look back to the Roman Catholic abuse scandal a few years ago and how everything just came out of the woodworks once one person really stepped forward, and then another person, and then another person. I think the same thing's going to happen here in Korea a few years down the line. The laws do need to change to protect those individuals. But eventually, school officials and other people who covered up abuses are going to really have to pay the piper. And these laws are going to have to be really reworked to significantly enact meaningful punishment for those that commit these crimes. 4 years for molesting a student. That's abysmal. I thought the last time with the 10 years was bad, but this is ridiculous. And some news that did come out this past Saturday regarding the North Korean who defected across the DMZ. That story came out on Saturday. The podcast came up on Sunday. I've really spent the last few days really trying to research as much as I could. A lot of comments in the last podcast specifically wanted to know about this issue, and this is what I can tell you. So far, about 25,000 total individuals have defected from North Korea to South Korea. The last to do so through the DMZ was actually in 2010. Crossing in the DMZ itself is very, very rare. Most people go out in the ocean, come around one of the limit lines, or they come back through different travel routes. Now, this individual was from the east side, and according to reports, there were shots fired. Those shots were heard, and then the individual came across the border, and South Koreans reported seeing bodies being removed and being moved out of place on the other side. Now, the defector is currently being interrogated by a number of different intelligence branches to see if it's a legit defection, to see exactly what happened. And I have to be honest, the first time I heard this story, both myself and my wife Jo, we said, seems a bit fishy. And we say that because given the state of relations between North and South Korea, given the state, I shouldn't say given the state, given the fact that presidential election is coming up very soon, it doesn't surprise me that something like this happened, that you send someone across from a covert standpoint. I'm not saying that is what is happening, but I think it is very prudent on South Korea to take some extra measures in interrogating this individual. At the time, while there's no troop movements taking place on the north side of the border, South Koreans are reportedly beefing up some patrols to make sure that everything continues to stay kosher. In some other South Korean news, a new adoption law in Korea is having some rather negative effects. Because the government wants more accurate records as it pertains to adoptions, a lot of mothers are now abandoning their babies. Because you have to list your entire pedigree, you have to list your contact information, a lot of mothers don't want to give that information because of the stigma of having a child with no father. So they're just abandoning the baby. And one of the things that actually is downfall of this new law is that it actually toughens things up for overseas individuals to adopt the babies. In fact, it's easier to adopt a baby from North Korea than from South Korea now. In news that just came out, just not too long ago, South Korean families of four individuals the families of four South Korean soldiers being held hostage by Somali pirates for more than 17 months have formally and tearfully approached the government to intervene for their release. Now, the ship was owned by a Singapore company carrying oil from Kenya to Malaysia, and it was seized by Somali pirates back in April in 2011. 7 months later, the pirates released the ship and 21 crew members from China, Indonesia, and Myanmar after ransom was paid by the Singapore company. But the four South Korean seamen still remain in captivity, and the pirates have threatened to execute them unless Seoul frees the 5 Somali pirates that they captured during the Navy's raid on a tanker back in January. They've also demanded compensation for the pirates killed in the assault. And if you look at the situation, this is nothing new in terms of how the pirates are acting. What I don't understand, what just, again, blows my mind, is that the international community has not taken down the pirate organizations. This is an area of the world that is very unsafe, and many countries have been affected by this. And really, you need to have a good police force go in there, multinational, to just wipe them out, to end the organization once and for all. Because time and time again, these pirates continue to strike, continue to extort money from governments and businesses because of the people that they capture. It just needs to end. Take the action. Do the right thing. Go in there and end it. Since I reported a few weeks ago that South Korea was going to look at expanding their missile ranges, they have since gotten approval. North Korea has come out and said, well, now that your missiles can fire all over our country, our missiles can fire all over your country and hit the United States. I, for one, don't believe that in the instance. I do believe that they probably have missiles that could target all of South Korea. But in terms of being able to reach the United States, I'm sorry. I don't see that. Considering that their longest and largest ballistic missile and space shot failed miserably, I don't see how they could have a missile that could reach American soil. Whether it be Guam or whether it be Hawaii, I just don't see it. Empty words. And finally, a currency swap between Korea and Japan is about to expire. Politicals are basically saying that neither country needs the economic security of the other and would rather rely on external measures because they feel their economies are strong enough and the world economy is strong enough. I don't agree with that. I think that as an economic support network here in East Asia, all three companies need to work together. All three countries need to work together to really make sure that the economy stays strong. I think this is really falling on the Dokdo Takashima fallout that we've been dealing with for several years. And how can these two countries really, and I'm talking about Japan and Korea, how can these countries continue to try and say that they're promoting stability, promoting their national interests in terms of the economy, in terms of bilateral relations, when such evident partisan and nationalism takes priority over what is common sense and what is for the common good? In this particular instance, no one is a winner. And if you're going to be relying on Europe, if you're going to be relying on other markets to provide your safety net should your economy take a tank, you're in for a world of hurt. Europe has a long way to go to recover, and relying on them to bail you out should something drastic happen here is not the way to go. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the news this week. Welcome back. It is time for the Content Rewind. Cheers to you, my friends. Bourbon. So tasty. So good. This week, we launched a new series, the Suwon Hwasong Fortress and Cultural Event Catalog. I don't know what you want to call it. But Culture and History of Suwon. It is one of my favorite places in all of Korea. And when you think about how cool the fortress is and what it represents and the time and work that went into building it, it's just an amazing place. It's always a location that I always take my friends and my family and anyone coming to the area to because it's just that cool. The video that came up on Tuesday, the Hwasong Castle, Hwasong Fortress, was actually my fourth take on that video. And one of the cool things about it is that every time I do a video about the fortress, I uncover some new nuggets of information, change the way I edit a few things, and try to make it a more professional piece of content. And I really do have to say thank you to those that have watched all the different iterations and have commented every single time. Specifically Eric Surf 6 and John Fanpants. You both left great comments. I really do appreciate that. I try my best to produce content that is educational but entertaining at the same time. The blog article is over on the Korea blog, so this marks the first time, I think since the spring, that I've done something in conjunction with COSIS, and I'm glad to be back there. So instead of going to my site to read more about the Fortress, you would go to their site. And in the show notes, there's links to both the video and the blog article over on the Korea blog. And one of the cool things about this video, because shooting it always stays in my mind and because I love it so much, I was able to keep in mind when I went there in 2010 to film the subject for CNN Go. So I purposefully wore the same shirt, the same pants. Shoes have gone by the wayside, but I still had shoes very similar to what I wore. So we were able to film it a lot faster than if we were going there for the first time. And I actually reused a number of scenes from 2010 into this video. And if you've watched it, I wonder, besides the Paldal Moon, which is now under reconstruction garb, if you watch the video, can you spot where those are? I think it's quite challenging, I think, at times, but there are a few keys, and I'll give you the hint. It's this right here. This right here. If you're watching the video, if you're listening to the podcast, you're out of luck. But if you're watching the video podcast, it's the T-shirt. That's the clue. That's the clue. Also, an update on Content ID system. Last week I had to record the podcast a little bit early before things were fully resolved, but the Daily Dot did another article about the appeal process, and then I released a video about how I address Content ID. It's a really step-by-step process of what I do each and every time I get a Content ID match, and hopefully if someone out there has a Content ID match and they're kind of clueless of what steps they need to do, this can provide some guidance. Because if you just rely on the YouTube internal system, you're SOL. The system is not geared towards the YouTube user. It's really geared towards the third-party content manager. And the reason why I say that is because as soon as the match happens, your content is flagged unmonetizable, if that's even a word. Monetize, I don't think is a word either. But anyway, you can't make money on it. They can throw their ads up on it. And as soon as you initiate the dispute, they have about a month to reply. And I say about a month because I'm not really sure what YouTube has in place. All I can say is when I initiated the dispute on this last time for the Namdaemun, Sungdaemun video, it said that the companies had until October 22nd to reply, which was about a month after I started the dispute. Again, YouTube, if you're listening, I would love to work with you to create a meaningful system that protects the copyright of the big entertainment industries, but also the intellectual property of the individual user. There are a lot of great people on YouTube, and the system is seriously flawed. You've come out with a new appeal process, and I have to say, it doesn't work. Warner Chappell denied my dispute without even looking at the evidence. Anyone who saw my video would have known that Requiem for Your Soul is not Sugar Baby Love. Yet they rejected my dispute, and according to your documentation, I should have had the ability to appeal that through the DMCA process. Gotta tell you, didn't happen. Only after I picked up the phone and called the head of copyright at Warner Chappell was the situation resolved. And my friends, that's what you have to do. In every single case I've had with copyright Content ID issues, it's taken a personal phone call, a personal email to the people directly in charge of managing copyright to get them resolved. And that's what you have to do. let's see, what else? And, on Sunday, this was a fun day for us. For those of you who've always wanted to see Joe, you have the opportunity to see her pretty soon. This past Sunday, we spent the entire day. When I say the entire day, I mean the entire day with KBS here in Korea. They followed us around our apartment. They shot me editing video. We went out to the Suwon Fortress. They filmed us cooking kimchi jjigae in the apartment. Anyway, that should be airing pretty soon. I believe on the 16th or so, maybe 19th. I don't know. Sometime this month in October. They'll be airing it on KBS, and I should be getting a digital file I'll upload as a video podcast to that. But she plays a prominent role in that as my executive producer, or as Mr. Joe McPherson of Zen Kimchi likes to call her, the human tripod. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Content Rewind this week. Welcome back. It is time for the Quintessential Quartet, and I once more raise my glass to you. Tasty, tasty beverage. This week on the Quintessential Quartet, I'm going to give you four important updates for QiRanger, because this is a very exciting time of the year, exciting time of the month, and I have some pretty cool things to share with you. So rather than doing a whole separate vlog, I thought I'd include it in the podcast because it's just some really cool stuff coming up. So first up, in just over a week, my mother is coming to Korea. Booyah! I have to say, I am totally jazzed to have my mother here. It'll be the first time that my family has come to Korea. Joe's family has already been here, but my family has never come to Korea, and I am totally excited to have my mom here for about 2 weeks. It's going to be great, and I've already cleared it with her. So while October, the video series, is about Suwon history and culture, the November series is going to feature my mom, and it's going to be entitled QiRanger's Mom in Korea. So I'm going to take her around to a whole bunch of different places, and the premise of the series is to get an honest reaction of what it's like traveling in Korea and experience Korea for the very first time. I've been here 4 years. Joe here's been here for 3 years. A lot of our friends have been here for several years. And a lot of people have expressed an interest in coming to Korea. And I really hope that having conversations with my mom as we take her to, say, the Suwon Fortress or take her to some of the museums here, you can get an idea of what it is like to actually be here by someone who has never traveled around Asia before. So if you're looking to come to Korea, this is kind of what you can expect. So I'm totally jazzed about that. Because my mother is coming here and I want to spend as much time with her as possible, I'm going to make some changes to the podcast towards the end of the month, specifically on episodes airing on the 28th and November 4th. Because my mother's here, I don't want to spend the hour plus shooting the podcast and editing and uploading, yada, yada, yada. So what I'm going to do those weeks, it's going to be a condensed podcast featuring only the set course for adventure segments. Those I record separately from the main body of the podcast with the presenters those weeks. So I'll continue to do that and upload a beginning tag and an end tag to each of the podcasts. But for the main part, for those 2 weeks, we'll just do the podcast portion of the set course for adventure portion of the podcast for those 2 weeks. Now, going on from there, number 3 on the Quintessential Quartet is I have decided that this season, season number 3, will be the last season of the QiRanger podcast in this format. And the reason why I've decided that is because I love doing the podcast. I love sitting with the microphone. I love doing different aspects of the podcast. But as I continue to run and increase my distance, it's taking more time. And if I look at where most of the comments come from the video podcast and on the audio podcast, it really centers around the news. And one of the reasons why I put all these different pieces into the podcast is because I want the information to be of benefit for you. I do this because I love it, and I also do it because I want you to get something out of it. If you're spending the time watching the video podcast or listening to the audio podcast, I want it to be rewarding for you. And from what I'm seeing and what I get back in comments, most people get the most out of the news. So what I'm going to do coming after vacation in 2013 is have a news show. So those will continue to go up on Sunday in place of the podcast, and it'll focus on a week's roundup of Korean East Asian news. It'll basically be the first 30 minutes of this podcast in its entirety, just as it always is. Maybe tighten down just a little bit, fewer stories to really just focus and get things going, the leading stories, the most important stories of the week. But I really love reporting the news. I love commentary on the news, commenting on the news. When I first started doing YouTube videos, I used to have the news show, the QiRanger report. I used to do the tech news, the wacky news, the big news of the story, 6-7 days a week. And I miss that. Doing these podcasts really has brought back that love. And I would really like to focus more on providing that insight, providing that commentary on a deeper basis and in a format that is easier to digest rather than a half-hour rambling session. So that's coming up. The other reason why I want to do that, or in the podcast in its present form, is because of work, because of shooting schedules, because of training schedules, and even more so next spring when I start training for the ultra marathon. I haven't had time to do QiRanger RTW, the National Park Series I want to do. So my plan is this: upload the news report on Sundays, and then in the middle of the week, upload the National Park Series. And because it's a 12-part series, I'll gauge it out, spread it out, over the course of the entire spring. And I'm really hopeful that that will be the ideal system, because the time it should take to do both of those would be the same time as it takes to do this podcast. And I'm actually jazzed about that because I really want to get into doing the QiRanger RTW. I love the national parks, and I really can't wait to tell the stories of so many places around the world. And number 4 for the Quintessential Quartet. I keep on getting questions, both in interviews, such as with KBS and other people, on how I develop topics for my videos. So I thought I'd share that with you now as I start moving into planning for next season. It's really 2 ways. Number 1, I ask. I ask the listeners, I ask the readers of my blog, I ask the viewers of my videos, what things do you want to see? That's why I have the questions at QiRanger account. If you have a question about Korea, about travel, you have the opportunity to email me directly. It's something that I read. I love getting those messages. So taking that into consideration, I can look at different video ideas, because a lot of times, rather than writing a reply, it's so much easier to go out and show someone the answer or talk about the answer. So that's one way that I get ideas for video. The second idea is, the second method of me generating video ideas is that they're topics that I'm genuinely interested in. I've mentioned this to a few of my friends, but I have a spreadsheet on my computer with some 60 different topics on it. So when it comes to an idea about a video or what I want to show, I have a lot. And I'm a firm believer that you watch a person on YouTube or you pay attention to a particular content creator because there's something fundamentally interesting about them. There's something in there that you connect with, that you're drawn to. And you have that connection. So what is interesting to me, on some level, I guess is interesting to you. So if I continue to do what is also interesting to me, there's an inherent interest on your part as well. So that's how I create the topics for my videos. It's a combination of doing what I find interesting, which I think in part is what you find interesting, and also I rely on you to let me know what things you would like to see and what I can achieve here in Korea. So there you have it. That is this week's Quintessential Quartet. If you have an idea of things that you would like for me to cover in terms of sharing some knowledge on 4 things about a particular topic, please send me an email to questions@QiRanger.com. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to set course for adventure one more time. And this week I am joined by a former research engineer who has sold everything to feed her travel need. Her name is April D. Thompson, and she is the woman behind the Absolute Travel Addict. April, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, April, where are we going to be discussing this week?
So today we're going to talk about my home away from home, which is Kingston, Jamaica.
Ah, I love Jamaica. I really do. Blue Mountain Coffee is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, it's great.
All right, so tell us a little bit about Kingston.
So Kingston is Jamaica's capital city. It's the largest city in Jamaica, and it's located on the southeast coast. So for most travelers that are, coming to Mobay or Ochi or Negril on the north coast, it's an area that they kind of avoid and don't really make it to, but it's a beautiful city, and there's so much to do there, and I love calling it home.
No, why do you call it your home away from home?
Well, I spend most of the year there now, and it's kind of grown on me, and I look at it not as just a vacation. There's the beach and there's all the fun stuff to do, but I live there, I work there, I go out, I have friends there, I have an apartment. It's home. It's more so home than Atlanta is for me at the moment.
Okay, that's perfectly and understandable. Kind of the way I feel about Korea here rather than the United States. So if someone wanted to go to Kingston, what are some of the ways that people can get there?
Well, it's really easy. There are 2 major airports in Jamaica. The first is Sangster International, which is in Montego Bay. And you can fly into Montego Bay and either take a short flight over to Norman Manley International Airport, which is in Kingston, or there's several ways to get down to Kingston from Montego Bay, whether it's the Knutsford Express, which is one of their luxury buses, or taxis or driving. And then, of course, you can fly directly into Kingston, Norman Manley International Airport, and several airlines service the island, from Delta, American Airlines, Caribbean Airlines, etc.
Now, in terms of flying in to either Norman Manley or Sangster, is there a huge price differential, or do some airlines only fly into one?
Yeah, so Delta only flies into Montego Bay, and American has most of their flights. Well, American mostly flies into Kingston. So it depends on, what your airline preferences are, where you're flying from, because from Atlanta there is no direct flight into Kingston. But there's several options, and the price difference isn't really a major consideration. It may be $50 to $100 at most, but again, it's just dependent on your airline preference and where you're flying from.
Okay, cool. So once you get down to Jamaica, where are some places that you can stay?
So there's not the same type of resort feel that you find on the North Coast, which is actually a good thing, I think. But tons of great places. My favorite hotel is the Spanish Court Hotel. It's the newest hotel in Kingston. I think it was built about 2 years ago. But it's fairly small. It's only 3 stories. And it's really chic and has the rooftop pool and rooftop spa treatments and things like that. It's just a great hotel, and it's located in the central area in New Kingston, which makes it great for business travelers and leisure travelers. So by far my top recommendation. In that same area, there are a handful of other hotels that are traditionally for the business traveler, but again, they work for people on vacation as well. Okay. That's the Wyndham, Pegasus Hotel, and a couple of others, and these are all in the New Kingston area, which is the most lively area where a lot of businesses, a lot of bars, clubs, etc.
Okay, now, go ahead.
So for a little more, I guess, different type of experience, there is a luxury mountain spa called Strawberry Hill, and it's a little ways outside of Kingston in the Blue Mountains, but it's a beautiful property, great views of the city, and it's a really relaxing retreat. So that's another alternative as well.
Now, have you stayed at the Strawberry Hill?
I have not stayed at the Strawberry Hill, but I've visited for events, and I've had dinner there, which was amazing. So sitting out there on the patio at night, getting to see the night view, and having their great food was an awesome experience. I hope to stay there soon.
Do they serve Blue Mountain coffee at Strawberry Hill?
Of course they do.
See, whenever I go to Jamaica, I always have to make an allotment in my suitcase or my luggage or my backpack, because Blue Mountain coffee, as I said, is one of my favorites, and it's so much cheaper to buy it in Jamaica than anywhere else that I find myself just bringing it tons and tons back. Just out of my personal curiosity, what is the going rate for like a pound of Blue Mountain on the island now?
It really depends on the brand that you're getting, because there's a wide range of them. Jablum to, I can't even think of many others, but maybe like just $5, 500 Jamaican and up. It just really depends on where you're getting it from. The grocery stores and some of the markets would be a little cheaper, and then you have some of the I guess the more upscale coffee boutiques like Cafe Blue, where you can get another wide range of selections of coffee. But $5 to $10, not too bad.
Oh my gosh! Compared to what I paid in the United States for 100% Blue Mountain coffee, or what we pay here in Asia, that is heaven sent. That is heaven sent. That's fantastic.
Yep.
As far as things to do once you get down there, what kind of activities would you recommend?
So it's like any other city. You can do a lot of the stuff that you do at home, but some of the things that really stand out and what I try to make sure my friends see and do are one, definitely go to the Bob Marley Museum. And I know people think it's kind of cheesy, but it's Bob Marley's former home located on 56 Hope Road, and it's just a great way to get a glimpse into what his life was like. And the people there who are giving tours are his family, his friends, and they know a lot about the person, who he was. It's a great little place that also, hosts different events. So I was there for Bob Marley's birthday celebration, which is huge every year in Jamaica. So different people from all over the world came to celebrate. His kids were there. His wife, Rita, was there. And it's just always a really good time and a great celebration. And people just kind of forget the problems that are going on. They don't look at economic standing. It's just, if you're there, you're having a good time, you're enjoying the vibe, you're enjoying the music, and it's just such a great place to hang out.
Oh, I bet. And he was so influential to so many artists. And to be able to go to that destination, to go to the museum, and have tours led by his actual friends and family must make it more real and give you a better insight to just who he was.
Exactly.
Cool. So what else can you recommend?
So of course, Jamaica being in the middle of the Caribbean, there's lots of beaches, lots of fun time in the sun and sand. And I definitely love Hellshire Beach, which is a little outside of Kingston, but for Sundays, it's the place to be. There's a line of fish fry places lined along the beach. There's great music, and it's just a fun day with family and friends all day and all night long. Of course, there's the Blue Mountains for people that are looking for a little hiking, a little bike riding. There's also Blue Mountain coffee farm tours available in the Blue Mountains, which is a lot of fun. For nightlife, Kingston is like the capital city for nightlife in Jamaica. There are a handful of really great clubs that play everything from, traditional reggae to dance hall to whatever's playing elsewhere in the world, but they're always a lot of fun. One of my favorite places is Usain Bolt's Treks and Records. So this is Usain Bolt, the
Right, the world
amazing
famous
sprinter.
athlete, right?
And it's a great little sports bar that has concerts every Tuesday with a lot of the local Jamaican artists. Just a lot of fun. I mean, there's no end to activities and events to do in Jamaica. The marketing teams of some of the organizations like Pepsi and the Diageo brands, they're always doing something within the community, and a lot of these events are free. So, I mean, it's just a lot of fun.
Oh, pretty cool. Any museums or anything to see down in Kingston?
Yes, tons of museums, but one of my favorites is the National Gallery of Jamaica. It's the oldest and largest public gallery of the English-speaking Caribbean, and I've been there a couple of times, and one was for a retrospective of Barrington Watson, which is a prolific Jamaican painter, and they do these retrospectives and these exhibitions every so often, and it's just a great place that's, you know, small and quaint, but there's a lot of Jamaican culture and history there. And they do a lot for kids too. So on the weekends, the kids come in and they have their different art classes, and just a really good museum to visit, and a lot of things changing and going on at that location as well.
Oh, pretty cool. Any particular restaurants that you think people should know about when visiting Kingston?
Yeah, so there are tons of places you can get great Jamaican food, jerk food, but what a lot of people don't know is that there's a lot of other influences in Jamaica. So there's Indian, there's Vietnamese, Chinese. One of my favorite Indian places is called Pushpa, which is not too far from the Bob Marley Museum. And another place I like to go is called Chilitos. It's Jamexican, so Jamaican, Mexican food. So you have tacos with jerk chicken and other Jamaican things mixed into Mexican goodness. So I mean, it's an awesome place, a great vibe, lots of good times.
Oh, I bet. I really love jerk spice, and I remember the last time I was in Jamaica, we were at this Italian restaurant, and instead of just the traditional spaghetti and meatballs, they seasoned the meatballs with jerk spice. Oh
wow!
It was so nice. It was so great. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. My mouth is just watering. In terms of other things, anything really unique about Kingston?
Well, yeah, sure. Kingston is home of Kingston Harbor, which is the 7th largest natural harbor in the world. And I love going to the harbor. It's a really great place to go, like on Sunday morning, because all of the kids from the area will come out and they're swimming and having a good time. And it's just a great place to pass the time and watch the ships come in. And downtown Kingston has a reputation for being a little sketchy at times, but it's really nice to see how they're changing things, building new structures, and trying to give a facelift to downtown Kingston. So they're bringing in special brunches on Sunday. A lot of the museums, like the National Gallery of Jamaica, are located right by the harbor, so you can go in, check out all of the artwork, and then come have lunch by the harbor. It's just a really great place to hang out. I mentioned a little earlier that Kingston, not a lot of people know that it's not just jerk chicken. There's a lot of I guess cultural influences within Jamaica, from Indians to Chinese, Lebanese. I was really surprised with just how mixed up it is, and how diverse the culture and the population is. There's a German area on the south coast of Jamaica, and it all plays a role into how people live their lives, the things they do, the activities that are there, and it really makes it a lot more interesting. It's not just one-sided. Everybody has dreadlocks, everybody eats jerk chicken all the time. It's really a really cool place to be.
Cool. Now, you mentioned that at times the downtown area of Kingston gets kind of a sketchy reputation. In terms of overall safety, would there be any concerns?
And I tell people all the time, it's kind of like, living in New York City or Atlanta. There are places that you don't want to go, especially at night, especially alone. But in general, I've never had any problems anywhere in Kingston, whether it's downtown, uptown, etc. You just have to use common sense and take the same precautions that you would in any urban area. Downtown Kingston, where the harbor is located, I've gone there several times during the day and at night. I was there for New Year's Eve, and never had any problems. So it's just about taking certain precautions, and don't show all your jewelry and flash everything. But in general, you don't really have any problems as long as you avoid certain areas which will be well known to stay away from.
Okay. If someone was going to Kingston and they had a very limited time, what would be one thing that you would tell that person that they could not miss? It is a must-see thing to do while they were staying there.
Oh, there's so many things. So I would probably say definitely the Bob Marley Museum, just because you can get so much from that one experience. It takes you, a little outside of New Kingston, and the ride there from the airport is beautiful. And if I could add one more to that,
okay,
I would also say Port Royal. Port Royal is actually a little closer to the airport, and Port Royal is where the Pirates of the Caribbean used to hang out. The Wicked
Bunch, huh?
Yes. So I think that's a great place to see, again, a little more culture and history of how things used to be before the earthquake that destroyed the city. And that's another great place to visit. It's on the water, great fried fish there, and again, it's a little more of the culture and history of Jamaica.
Well, cool. April, thank you so much for sharing your insights about Kingston.
Sure, no problem. Happy to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest this week has been April D. Thompson from The Absolute Travel Addict. All of her contact information will be in the show notes, so make sure you surf on over to QiRanger.com so you get her links. You can also follow her on Twitter at AbsoluteADT. April, again, thank you for joining me on the podcast this week.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will just about do it for this week's podcast. I'd like to thank you for spending part of your day or week watching us on YouTube, downloading the podcast from either QiRanger.com or iTunes. It always is a pleasure to do these for you. I'd also like to thank April D. Thompson of Absolute Travel Addict for joining us this week on Set Course for Adventure. If you have some feedback about the podcast, please send it to podcast@QiRanger.com, or if you have any questions, you can send those to me at questions@QiRanger.com. Until next week, you can also follow me all over the internet, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Just look for QiRanger. I'll be there. But until next week, remember to be true to yourself and always be awesome.